Today you've reached the Video Confidence Coach Cast, is what I'm calling this podcast for now until I come up with a better answer. But today I wanted to discuss with you the prompt that I've seen a couple of my lead groups and a couple of people that I are not necessarily my target market, but they come to me because they say, "Oh, Zoe, you're a video confidence coach. You do all these things right. Okay, I'm going to ask you questions about this." Even though it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, I will obviously have opinions on things as they come up. But I did have someone reach out to me recently. I think it was a networking event that I went to. And all right, I'm going to take off my glasses because I am fogging them up like crazy. And for those who are watching, feel free to comment if you're watching live, or if you are just watching on the replay, feel free to hashtag replay, and I'll answer your questions when we finish the live stream. So, getting back to it, Zoe. Ultimately, the story that she had for me is that we sat down during this networking event. So we had done a fairly intensive networking event where it was very regiment and very strict, as in people had certain times to talk, and you were there in a room with a whole bunch of other people and they were talking about, hey, this is what I need, this is what I don't need. But then, you didn't have a chance to mingle about. And of course, afterwards, they came up to me and said, hey, I've seen you about, you're very unique is the term that she used. And I don't know if she was meaning that as a diss or not. I can't really tell. I am very unique. I am big. I am blue. I am bright. Deal with it. And essentially she came up to me and she wanted to talk about podcasting because she says, that was one of the things that you mentioned that you do. And I've talked to a couple of other people who you've done podcasts with. And like, essentially she was like really beating around the bush. And I just said, what is it that you want to ask? And she says, Zoe, I'm not a celebrity. And I said, sure, do you need to be? And she carried on the conversation and talking about how she wanted to start a podcast specifically for a charity that she was working with and helping, and that she wanted to start a podcast to interview people who that she was both serving and the people who were in charge of getting those services to the people that needed to be served at the charity. And she said that there were so many people who have so many questions that I can answer through a podcast. And ultimately, the way that I needed to, essentially, she realized that a podcast was the best way to get the answers out there. But she said that, all the examples out there of podcasts are people who are celebrities. And the only people who listen and take notice of podcasts are when it's being helmed by a celebrity. And I'm not a celebrity, Zoe. And I don't know anyone who is willing to host the podcast who is a celebrity. So I did my hands. And for those who may not know me, I talk with my hands a lot. I am definitely not Italian, but I definitely talk with my hands a lot. And I just kept putting my hands up and just going, it's okay, it's okay. I understand when you see an entire world of podcasting. The reason why podcasting is so ever present and feels like it is growing and growing and growing is because it is a really easy format to start. When it comes to reaching a lot of people in a really easy format, podcast is usually what people think of, because especially when it comes to audio podcasts, all you need ultimately is a mobile phone and a doona cover. What I mean by that is that you can start a podcast on your mobile phone. It is super easy to do. Now, of course, when it comes to video podcasts, there's probably a little bit more production value. And the reason why a lot of people focus on video podcasts is because you see it on social media. You see it on websites. You can see how people are talking on a website, and more people are more likely to click and find interest in it because they can see who is talking. But when it comes to podcasts, you don't need to do a video podcast off the bat. You can start off with an audio podcast, and then once you've got a consistent routine for yourself, then you can move to a video podcast. I digress. So going back to the story, and we kept talking. And eventually it just got to the point of, I just ultimately said, do you need to be a celebrity? Because what you see out there in the podcasting space, sure, that's what gets the numbers, that's what gets the money when it comes to the money side of podcasting. But you want to get the message out there. You want to showcase to people that the people who are donating to your charity, they want proof that their money is going to the people that you say it is. Now, of course, there's the legal side of that where you need to show your, tax returns and donation statuses and, accreditations and all that legal stuff. Of course, that is not my wheelhouse, so I'm not going to talk about that. But when it comes to showcasing proof, having an honest conversation with the people that you're helping through your charity, a podcast is the easiest way to do that. And you don't even need, and I want to stress now, you don't even need to do a lot of work to do it. If it is easier just to have a time, a series of maybe 8 podcasts, maybe 10 of, 8 conversations that you can have with people who are related to the charity. Again, being people who work for the charity or people who are served by the charity. 8 conversations seems really easy to do. And I mentioned this to her and she says, "Oh, Zoe, I have 10 conversations a day." And I said, how many of them can be turned into a podcast? And she said, about, I'd say 5 to 6. There you go. Relatively easily. Now, of course, I want to stress, there is a difference between a conversation that you have with one or more people in a private setting as opposed to a public recorded setting. I want to stress that. But if you're having these conversations every day, regardless, a podcast does seem like the next best thing for you to do. And I can understand the mentality of this person I was speaking to, how they felt like they needed the charisma to be able to host the podcast. And the reason that they have this charisma is because they're practiced. They are actors. They are people in the public eye or who have been in the public eye for a very long time. They have been practicing down to the T. They've got media training, usually thousands and thousands of dollars worth of media training. But if you don't get started, you aren't going to try. You're going to keep finding more excuses to put in front of yourself to stop yourself from doing and to achieve what you ultimately want to achieve. And I'm saying that both to you and to me. And as these actors use podcasting, because again, it's just conversations at the end of the day, something that a lot of these actors, and again, public figures, are having a lot of. They're having a lot of conversations in general. So they are very practiced with those conversations, especially when they are recorded for public consumption, be it a podcast. But podcasting and producing a podcast is something that can be used as a bounce board to be able to generate more discussions, to generate more content, if that's what you want to do ultimately. And for example, what I'm doing in the Video Confidence Coaches, I'm using a live stream, the Video Confidence Connect, that I do once a week to generate podcast episode, the Video Confidence Coachcast, to generate consistent content. And all I'm doing is having a conversation with you once a week. And I'm generating content from that. I'm generating smaller snippets to then use on my website, on my email list, and blogs, as well as social media, if I so choose. You're using it as a jumping off point to get started. The transcriptions from your podcast episodes can be turned into blog posts. The words that you're using can help dictate and help you have better messaging for your ultimate press releases that you are releasing out into the world, if that is what you need. Especially for charities, so many press releases, a ridiculous amount of press releases. And if you've got the wording and the content that people use to speak about their own experiences, it's already there. It's already captured because you did it and you started doing the process. Now, again, at the end of this conversation, it was about a 20-minute conversation with this person. We ultimately got to the point of she's going to do it. We just needed to figure out the next clear one step. And that's usually what I like to do with conversations that I have with people, be it at networking events, be it, 15-minute grabs that I have with people. You always want to leave with the easy next step. And the next step that I had for her was something just as simple as, okay, write a list of 10 people you could have a conversation with on a podcast who would pretty much be up for being on a podcast. You don't have to label the subject. You don't have to label the topic. You don't even have to start naming the podcast. Just start off with a list of 10 people who you think will be willing to be on the podcast. Done. And I reached out to her mentioning that I was going to mention her as an example. And she said, yeah, fine, go ahead, Zoe. And I reached out to her. She's not even a client of mine. She's possibly a lead. We'll see. And I reached out to her, I think, earlier this week. And I just said, how are you going? And she says, oh, we've already recorded the first 10 podcasts. And I said, woo, well done. How did you do that? She said, oh, I just let them know. And then I just pressed record on the Zoom meetings we're already having, and it's already done. It's already done. So podcasting ultimately is not just for celebrities. Podcasting is a tool that you can use to build up your business, your charity, your group, or to promote your hobby to people who need to hear from you. And making sure that, again, you're doing this for the right reasons of doing it for your audience first. Not just your own ego, and not just your own, I'm going to look so great after having done a podcast. No, that's not how it's going to work. I'm just sorry to burst your bubble there. That's not how it's going to work. If your audience needs the message, if your audience needs to understand what's going on, and the easiest way for you to do that is to have a conversation with them, done. Absolutely done.